Today we're doing something different, obviously, a little bit different, and it's going to be a blessing. I'm sure you guys are going to be blessed. We're going to spend some time interviewing some missionaries and talking to them, kind of getting an idea of their life, and really my purpose in this is for us to get to know them, so you guys feel like you know them. So I'm introducing them to you, kind of talking to them a little bit, and they're going to be here till January, so you can kind of get involved with Danny and Connie and get a little bit, just a little closer to them. They want to feel part of this body, and they have been for years, and as we grow, it kind of gets a little bit more difficult as they come back, so I'm going to integrate them in, and we're going to do that purposely. Danny is originally from Bisbee, so that's a plus. Right? So we all like that, right? So, he's, actually Danny and I did go to school together, but I didn't know, well, I probably knew about him, but since he was an underclassman, you didn't talk to him, right? Kind of had that snobbery things going on. I hung out with Danny's older brother, Steve, as a matter of fact. His older brother and I were in a rock band at one point, and I use that term very loosely. So, we sounded really good in a 10 by 10 bedroom with everything cranked as loud as it could go. And you sounded good. You got out of that environment, not too good. But anyway, I hung out a lot with Steve, and here's the crazy thing. Danny's dad was my art teacher in high school that taught me how to do pottery. So there's like some deep connections between us. And one more thing before I bring them up. Danny and Connie, when we planted the church in Bisbee, I planted the Calvary Chapel in Bisbee, Danny and Connie came home on furlough, and they were there for a year and a half. And you know what? During that time, man, I hit so many hard times. I wanted to quit. I wanted to quit pastoring. I wanted to quit ministry. And Danny Turner kept me going. He came alongside me. He was there to encourage me and just be that person in your life that you don't want to quit. It's too early, and I found out it's always too soon to quit, right? Keep that in mind. But anyway, Danny just ministering to me. We've had that bond since then. So that was like in 1990. So we've been around each other since then, acquainted. It's been a privilege for our church to be part of what they're doing. So Danny and Connie Turner, why don't you guys come up here and we'll do this thing. It's funny because they're not shy at all. No, they're kind of used to this. So this is Danny and Connie Turner, and we're just going to talk to them a little bit. What I wanted to start with, though, this morning is I want to go all the way back because they have a unique story on, I think, a little different than most of us in here, on how they came to the Lord and how they began ministry. So I want to go way back. How did this guy from Bisbee end up with this girl from Kansas and end up in Thailand, of all places? Kind of a crazy story, right? So back in the beginning.
Okay, back in the beginning, in the late 60s and early 70s in the States, there was something called the Jesus People movement, where people that had been hippies, there was a hippie thing going on, and the Lord began to move in that time. Hippies who were, tried everything, God began to reach them just where they were at. It started in, I think, in Northern California and all over the place, and just started to spring up spontaneously. I was high school in the 60s, and I graduated in 71, and I had done what I wanted to do, getting stoned and playing music and all that. And then I discovered by the end of that time that I was actually very miserable, had nothing in my life that I wanted, even though I could do anything I wanted. I had no idea what I wanted. And in 72 or 71, I just got out of high school, and Jesus Freaks came from Tucson. There was a Jesus People house in Tucson, and they would come down every few weeks. This was their task, come down and save the heathen in Bisbee. And so we'd be hanging out in the park and doing things that we shouldn't be doing. And and they come down and start witnessing, so you could see them from a mile off. Look out, here they come. And some of them were really cool, and some of them were kind of not so cool. But one guy started witnessing to me and told me, you're a sinner. And when he said those words, I knew that's true. I knew that I was a sinner because I had come to the point where I knew that nothing in my life worked. And I tried everything. I straightened myself out. I even quit smoking dope. I'm going to quit smoking dope. I'm going to be a good person. And that didn't do any good. And so then I thought, what else can I do? I don't drink. So then I became a vegetarian and tried that. And that didn't do nothing helped. And I knew inside I was a sinner. There's something wrong inside. And he said that Jesus died to fix that broken part. So I believed that. And I resisted the Lord for about 6 months. But after 6 months, I gave my heart to the Lord. That was on Christmas Eve in 1972. And I'll let Connie give her little.
Okay, similar, but I was on the Capitol grounds in Topeka, Kansas, and we were smoking dope and getting stoned on a statue. We were sitting, there was a statue of Abraham Lincoln in that Capitol grounds, and I was on one knee. My friend was on the other knee because it was a big statue. And we saw people coming out of the shadows. It was night. And we thought, who are these strange people? He says, it's Jesus freaks. I said, let's run, but we couldn't get down or do anything. So they just sat around the base. And as they talked to us about the Lord and about how he had changed their lives, I knew this is the truth. And we acted really cool and proud and resistant to what they had to say, but everything they said was really piercing my heart. Because the Spirit of God convinces you what's true.
Yeah.
And when I went home after a couple or 3 days of resisting, I was laying in bed and I thought, hey, if this is the truth, then I should just give my life to God because he knows what I should be doing. How can that be wrong, And I just had that thought in my heart, in my mind, yeah, this is true, that's what I should do. And the Spirit of God just came into me, whoop, like that. And I felt like this ton of bricks just came off of me. I felt light inside. And I thought, wow, I'm a Christian now. I didn't say the prayer. I didn't know anything about that. But God is so eager just to meet you where you're at. And that was it. And that group that came through our hometown, I joined them. It was a traveling evangelistic Jesus people type ministry. So I joined that group and I was on the streets witnessing, I think a couple days after I got saved.
It's kind of crazy, right? These guys get saved and right away they're doing stuff. Now, I got to clarify a couple things. It is not a prerequisite to get saved. You don't have to smoke dope.
No, you don't have
in
to.
order to get saved. I just wanted to clarifay that. I wanted to make sure we kind of understood that and had that down because some people are going, all right, well, but so we wanted to make sure you knew that. And then the cool thing, they bring up the Jesus people. I don't know how many of you know about that movement, but Calvary Chapel came out of that movement. And there's a great book called God's Forever Family. If you ever want to read about it, it's the history of that movement. And the interesting thing to me when I read that book is how much of the Jesus People movement actually was going on in the Midwest, where everybody was saying it was happening in California, but Connie is a product of the Midwest part. So here's these two youngsters, so to speak. They get saved, and then they start traveling, right? Did you start pretty quick going with Christ is the Answer, or Connie did, and then when did you join them?
Okay, Connie, I don't know, joined a few days after that, after she got saved. But I moved, when I got saved, I moved to Tucson. There was a Jesus People house there called Maranatha House on East Pima. And I lived there for about a year getting discipled because I knew, okay, if God is the real life, I have to go that way. I can't stay halfway here and halfway there because I knew I wouldn't make it. So I went there and lived with them for about a year. And we would go out witnessing on the streets in Tucson. And that was the one thing I hated most of anything was going out witnessing. I always was scared to death to do that.
That's all you do now.
But you had to do it, so we did it anyways. But I'd been there about a year, and this real freaky group of people came through, which was even freakier than our group of people. and that was who the guys that she was with. And
Yeah.
yeah, and they came and they set up on, I think it was on Speedway, way out past the I-10, on the other side of I-10 on Speedway. They had the big circus tent out there, and they were witnessing in the streets and stuff like that. And this was around Christmas time, I think. So we invited them to our Jesus People house and the church we were under, and we had Christmas dinner with them and stuff like that. And some of them were really getting called to our type of ministry because we had a house and they slept in tents, and this was winter time, you know. but while some of them were feeling the calling of God to come here, because they said in that ministry it was really tough because they had no sure place, and so it was always hard to find stuff to eat. And anyways, I felt called to do that because I wanted to really give my whole heart to what the Lord wanted. So I joined that group in Tucson when they passed through, and then we went from Tucson to Yuma, which is a wonderful place. then from Yuma, they went to Southern California, and was split up a few different places, and we ended up one point in Anaheim, just next to the parking lot of a huge Christian center in Anaheim. And next to that parking lot was a big dirt lot. And they set up the tent there, a big tent, 3,000 seats in that tent. And the group of people was there. We were going out witnessing on the streets and doing all that stuff. But there wasn't such a big crowd. You know, we heard, oh, Southern California is on fire for Jesus, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But by this time, a lot of the Jesus people thing, maybe people started becoming respectable. I don't know what it was. But the crowd wasn't very big in that tent. The tent was 3,000 people, and the crowd certainly didn't match that. And an Indian pastor who was visiting the States, he just happened to come by. And he saw that, and he went up to the guys who were
The leaders.
the leaders of the team at that time, and he said, "How come you're telling people in this country about the second coming of Jesus for the 100th time?" And he says, "In my country, there are people who've never even heard of Jesus once." He said, "Why don't you go there? That's where you need to be." So they accepted that as a challenge. And in the States, the team in the States put together, picked a team of about 12 people. She was on that team. I was on that team. And we flew to Italy, and there was a team in Italy, and they picked another 12 people or so. And they put us together in a bus and a van, and we drove from Italy to India in '76.
So this is pretty crazy, right? Think about these, kids get saved, go to Southern California, somebody says go to India, and they go, okay.
Yeah.
That was it.
And they go to Italy and get on a bus and drive to India. I mean, have you checked your geography? Yeah. That's kind of crazy. In my mind, it's crazy. Now, here's the great thing, though. It's great to be young and naive, but it's even greater to know Jesus and have that faith.
That's right.
And I look at Danny and Connie, what a step of faith to just say, okay, we'll go to India, and then do it that way. And there's some great stories. We got to interview these guys a couple times, because some of the stories they've told me over the years are great. But so you end up in India,
Yeah.
right? So now you're going to do ministry in India. And the focus there was from the challenge. You got to let people know about Jesus.
That's right. That's right.
That poor pastor, he didn't know what he was getting
Yeah, he
into.
said send a team. He didn't know he was going to get 25 people in his house,
But he handled it, and he
did
had
really.
about 90 churches that were under his charge in South India. He took us around everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's how we got our training, was through this pastor.
That's true.
And
We
I
had-
saw miracles that I never imagined with
Yeah.
this man. He was-
Yeah. You prayed for one sick guy who was laying on the mat in Madras near the railway station, and he had a fever, and he was shivering and really sick, and you and another... Oh, was that?
That was me.
I know, I said that was you.
Oh.
Yeah, it was you.
Yeah,
Still
he's giving
you.
you credit.
Yeah. And they prayed for him, and he just jumped up. Hallelujah. He got healed, instantly healed,
Great.
And that sort of stuff. It was a good training for us. And one thing we found out, well, anyways, I won't say anymore. That's the next question.
Oh, you're stopping in midsection. Okay,
Yeah.
so you're in India. The focus of the ministry there was kind of the same, just evangelism.
Evangelism and discipling.
Discipleship.
We took in Indian young people with us also, Bible school students, people like that this pastor was working with. And we brought them in with us. And we lived together in community. Of course, the sisters had one room and the brothers had a different room.
Or usually even
we weren't
separate
that
quarters.
much of a community. You know, we're very strict as far as that went. But we would go out evangelizing, doing open-air crusades, music, preaching, praying for the sick. And then we'd go out on the streets in the daytime with literature and doing street meetings on the corners with the guitars and stuff like that. And it was basically very similar to the kind of ministry in the States. And, you know, when you're ministering, actually just about anything you do will work. The thing that doesn't work is doing nothing. That doesn't work. But anything else you do, anything else you share
with your
with somebody,
heart.
with your heart, before the Lord, God will use it. We found that work.
So then how did Danny and Connie get together? Now you're on this team, you're strict rules, you can't interact with each other.
That's right.
So what happened?
Do you want to say it or do I want to say it?
I'll start.
Okay.
I don't know where it started with him, but we played in the, I knew his heart for God because we played in the band on the stage when we had our big evangelistic meetings. I was a little bit afraid of him because he was an elder. Yeah. He was one of the leaders and I was kind of joker and dorky, and so I was a little bit afraid of him. So I never thought of him as like a future husband because I thought he'd be really strict. And
That's funny. That's what I thought about you.
seriously?
Yeah.
No. But one day I was doing laundry in the bathroom, and our main elder, we called him elder in those days, our main elder went by and he said to Danny, "Hey, don't worry, Danny, I'll go back to the States and I'll bring you back a wife." And I felt really indignant and angry, and I thought, why does he have to go to the States to find a wife for Danny? I'm here. And that was the first time that kind of thing had ever even occurred to me. It wasn't like, oh, I have a crush on this guy and it's the Lord. It was just that thought. And I was shocked that I even had that thought.
Yep. That's one way you can tell sometimes the Holy Spirit's speaking to you.
Yeah.
You'll say something that never occurred to you. Whammo, there it is, you know.
Yeah.
And for me, it was similar too, that we had worked together there for about 3 years or 4 years. 3 years, I think, in India. And there was one day I was thinking, should I get married or not? I kind of didn't know, and I was thinking that if I was going to get married, who would I get married to? And I was thinking, would it be this person? I don't know. Would it be that person? I don't know. And the one person I didn't think of would be her because I thought she was like really, you know, sweet and innocent and nice person, you know. And so
You found out.
But then yeah, that's right. And instantly the Lord put into my mind, it's Connie. And I thought, wow, I never thought of that before. And so then after a month maybe, or several weeks after that, I got up the guts and I asked permission from the elders, can I speak with Connie about this subject? Yes, you can. Because they had to be real strict in India, because Indian culture, you don't mix together like that. You know, that's back in the days of arranged marriages, which still exist in India. And
Jesus people culture.
And Jesus people culture was like that too. Because if you're traveling around ministering together, you can't mess around like that, because that's just the downfall of everything, you know. So anyways, I asked her, I said, you know, I don't know, have you ever thought about marrying me, or does that sound like a stupid idea? And she said, oh no, that sounds like a good idea, she said. So,
then he thought, uh-oh,
yeah,
what did I do?
And then I found out what they say in India, that getting married is like deep sea fishing. You don't know what you got until it's in the boat. Anyways, but that's how that worked out.
We'll set you guys up with an appointment with Pastor Jack to figure that part out. But okay, so what a great proposal, by the way, Danny.
And we had a one month engagement.
Yeah.
Very good way to propose.
Yep.
So now you guys get married.
Yeah.
And now you're still in this
Yes.
Team.
movement and working in India. Then
Yep.
it broadened a little bit, right? Then you guys kind of broadened out. You were at the same time because of visas?
Yeah,
Going to-
because
going into
when the team first
other
went to
areas.
India, all the wise people said, you can't go to India and you can't be missionaries in India. It's not possible anymore because India is not giving missionary visas anymore since '76, which was when we went. But we figured, well, hippies are going to India, so we can still go to India, and we did. But the thing was the visas, yeah. So you have to go on
In and out.
in and out. We had to go in and out. We'd go in short term on a different kind of visa, but then we'd have to go out. So we got to Pakistan, go out to Sri Lanka, and we started teams in all three countries, and we were able to do the same thing in all three countries, and it worked well. We had a team in Sri Lanka that was evangelizing all over Sri Lanka with open air crusades and street meetings and door to door and all different things, which it had a really good effect in Sri Lanka. Like the churches really loved us because we were able to get things done that hadn't been getting done. And in Pakistan, we had a different kind of ministry there. But that's how it branched out. Because of necessity, it had to branch out. We couldn't just stay in one place all the time.
And then you and Connie moved eventually to Sri Lanka, right?
Yeah, we moved to Sri Lanka, and we were there for a longer term. When we first went to India, you could drive. You could drive all the way from Italy to India. Although we went in the wintertime, I don't recommend that. But then
Yeah.
that was in '76. But in '79, there was a war in Afghanistan. The Russians came in. Before that, I think maybe was it '78?
76, it was right. No, 79.
But
right after we
then the
got
Shah of
married.
Iran fell, and then
79.
Ayatollah Khomeini came in. So Americans driving through Iran was not such a good idea.
No.
And when we first went, you could take a bus. You could go to the Indian border in Pakistan, and you could go across into India. You could walk across. We could go by train from India to Sri Lanka. We do all that stuff. But we started having kids, and then they started having insurgencies and civil wars and things like that. So you couldn't cross these borders as easily. You had to fly. It got very expensive. And we were a mission that we had all things in common. We had no visible means of support, you know. So it got really hard. So then we'll just go to Sri Lanka and stay there for some time because we were having kids and stuff. So we did that.
We got visas there.
We got visas there, which were more permanent visas. And we worked there for several years with a team, yeah.
Okay, and then things got a little sketchy there.
Yeah, then in Sri Lanka, they were having two civil wars. In '83, they had riots over much of the country, and hundreds of thousands of Tamil people lost their homes, were driven out of their homes, their houses were burned down. So there was a civil war starting in the north because of that. The northern part was more of a predominantly Tamil area. They were trying to get a homeland. And then in the south, they had a Marxist insurrection going on in the south. So they
Same
had
time.
two civil wars going on at once. So then they started martial law. And under the martial law, gatherings of people was very difficult. You couldn't do any open air meetings anymore. And in that context, the army would go looking at houses, and if they found a group of people in a house that weren't the registered residents of the house, they'd take them out, and that would be the end of them. And so we had teams of people, teams of Sri Lankan young people in a few houses in Colombo. And one day the army came, they had pulled out their guns, put their gun to one guy's head, you know. And
But they didn't shoot him.
They didn't shoot him.
We thought they were going to.
but we thought they were going to. And we realized we can't keep a team in this context anymore. You guys are going to have to go back to your houses, otherwise you're going to get killed. So that changed. And so the context of ministry changed a lot. So at that time, one of the guys who had been in our mission, he had come to Thailand, and he said, "Oh, Thailand's wide open, you can come there, and we can start a training center in Thailand for missionaries going into other places."
Yeah, I just back up again. We used to use Sri Lanka as the place where if a new missionary came over, that's where they would get trained and
That's right.
broken in.
Yeah,
But that was not doable anymore.
yeah.
That was all.
So we had to move out of Sri Lanka, and the team members that were there, they went on to their own ministries, church planting, and all kinds of stuff. So those people are still continuing in ministry.
The Sri Lankans.
In Sri Lankans and in India also, the Indians we work with, they're continuing in ministries also. But at that time, the integrated foreign and national type of ministry became counterproductive at that point. Yeah.
So you came back to the States, what year was that, 90?
Yeah, 1990, we came back to the
That's
States.
right.
It was decided in 1990, trying to support this ministry when all of the missionaries and all of the local people in the ministry didn't have any kind of support base. So trying to support it became very difficult. Like there was one guy who was like the director, and he would try to go out and raise funds in Europe and in the States and then try to keep this supported in Pakistan, 2 teams in Pakistan, one with Afghan refugees, one in another part of Pakistan, a couple of teams in India, a team in Sri Lanka. Trying to keep all this support, it became very difficult. So in 1990, they said, okay, all you guys, you've been here living in community all this time, no support base, no nothing. Okay, everybody go back home, get a home church, get support, and come back out. All missionaries need to come out now with their own support. So,
And a home church.
and a home church. So try that after not being in America for 14 years. So
And you were never part of a home church.
and we're never part of a home
realistically,
church
right?
either. Yeah.
I mean, we were the group we were with, we were very submitted to
Right.
this.
That-
Not
that
like
was
we
our
were
home church.
just,
Yeah,
Yeah.
but a home.
But
Yeah.
not a locally established church, yeah.
Right.
And so we came back, and most of the people that came back to the States at that time, they were not able actually to find a way to get back out. But we came back to Bisbee. Fortunately, I had some roots in Tucson, but I had roots in Bisbee. And at that time, that's when Calvary Chapel starting up
Bisbee.
in Bisbee. So that was good. So we thought, well, we'll fellowship here. And maybe we'll see when the Lord puts it together, helping us to get support to go back out. That time, Pat, he knew all these guys in Calvary, and he said, oh, we'll help you get support. He gave me a list of like 100 or 100 so addresses of Calvary pastors. And say, hey, write to these guys and see if you can visit them and get support. I thought, this is great. This is a good plan, you know. So I wrote 100 letters and sent them all out. And we didn't get a single reply.
I have really good connections.
Yeah. and you know, so we tried everything we could,
But
and
it
it didn't
worked.
work. So we thought, hey, we're just going to have to pray, you know. So we just started praying, and then
that worked better.
yeah, it worked a lot better. Yeah. And then Calvary Chapel was actually our first. Calvary Chapel Bisbee was our first supporting church. We went back out to Thailand. We went out to Thailand. I think it was $400 a month we were getting from you guys. That was a big chunk for Calvary Bisbee.
That was
too.
400
That was-
altogether.
That was a lot of money, yeah. And so we're really thankful for that. That's why we were able to go back out.
So since 1990, you've kind of been connected to this church.
Yeah.
Although it changed.
Yep.
You know, so that's
Yeah,
a
it's
long
changed.
relationship. That's
Yeah.
a great relationship
Yeah.
and coming back and forth. But so you get to Thailand. When you first went to Thailand, you were going to do kind of the same thing, train up people, correct?
Yeah, train up people in like we did in
that
Sri
was,
Lanka.
quote, the vision.
That was, quote, the vision. That, quote, the strategy. And, you know, a lot of times we have our strategies and our visions, but God has one vision. He wants people to get saved. You know, it's a lot simpler sometimes than our strategies. But anyway, so we were supposed to, set up a training
For
base
missionaries.
for missionaries. But the thing was, during that time, the Jesus People group that we had been with, you know, a team-based organization, was starting to, in some ways, fragment. I don't mean fragment by splitting, by angry sort of splits. I don't mean like
Just
that. But just to begin to circumstances began to fragment, and it wasn't any longer really a team-based mission in that sense. And so we went out with the idea, okay, we're going to do training. Connie and I got a house in northeast Thailand with 2 houses in the same compound. We did all this with the idea of training people. All the time we were there, we had tried that for several years, but the mission only sent 2 people out to get trained. You know, so but during the same time, Connie and I, while we were there, we knew, okay, we're here in Thailand. First thing we're going to do is get the language. So we began learning the language at the same time. And then we began working with Thai young people just to evangelize in Thailand, doing open air evangelism, dramas, street meetings, literature distribution, all that
Taught
stuff.
Bible in a blind school.
We taught Bible in a blind school. That's a good way to learn language also. You know, teaching Bible in a blind school, you have to teach in Thai, and they're all blind. You can't use any, you can't like
Use any
use
hand
any
gestures,
motions or
like
any
we're doing
gestures.
right now.
Yeah, that was good. But anyway, so what we had originally gone there for didn't work. But evangelizing in any way always works. So that's just what we did. We worked with the Thai young people, and we kept a team going there until 1990. No, sorry.
2000.
Till 2000, yeah. Y2K. That was disastrous, Y2K.
Yeah.
We visited India during Y2K, and you know, the garbage wasn't picked up, and the water didn't work, and all that stuff, but it was like that every other year, too. So. Yeah, by 2000, Connie and I were feeling very isolated, very alone, and we've always been used to working in a team with a group of people. And so at that time, we got to where we felt like we had given everything we had, and we couldn't function anymore like that. So we came back to the States, kind of open-ended at that point, not knowing what we were going to do. That was in 2000. You want to say anything? I'm talking all the time. So we came back. Okay.
I mean, I guess that it's in your blood. Like, we are here. We're kind of doing the same thing here we were doing there. Well, I worked at CareNet, but after about 2 years, somebody really encouraged us. We don't have to go through all of that.
Yeah, we do.
We applied to several missions, and one mission responded. We were almost 50 by this time. Yeah. So one mission responded to us, and that was WEC International, which means World Evangelization for Christ. And it was started by C.T. Studd, if you've ever read about him. But it mostly was based out of Britain, but the U.S. base was in Philadelphia. So we went to Philadelphia and went through their candidate training course, and they told us they wanted to send us back to Thailand.
Yeah, that's right.
And I kind of thought, no.
Anywhere but Thailand, Connie said. We'll learn any language. We don't want to go back to Thailand. But they said, no, you need to go back to Thailand. So we did.
And I'm glad we did.
Yeah.
So then when you went back, so you were here, and that was like a 3-year process, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Overall, you came back not knowing what you're going to do. You go back to Thailand. Now the vision was the vision then to plant a church?
Well, when we first got to Thailand, in the WEC team in Thailand, there wasn't really, the focus wasn't necessarily very sharp in that particular sense. WEC Thailand was working in 3 provinces of central Thailand that were the most unreached. When they first went there in 1947, they were like the most unreached provinces of Thailand, and people thought, generally speaking, they were the hardest provinces of Thailand. So that's where WEC decided we're going to go there. And when we went there were some local churches that had already been established. So most of the missionaries were working in those local churches. And I remember the first big conference, WEC conference, yearly conference we went to there. We were introducing ourselves, and they were asking us what sort of burden we had. And we said, well, we hope we don't really want to work in an existing church. And they said, well, what are you going to do then? You know, I mean, how could there possibly be anything else besides that? But we said, well, we'd like to do evangelism, something like that. You know, we didn't want to be inside the church. We didn't want to be teaching Sunday school in the church or doing something else. We wanted to be outside the church. That's what I meant by that. But we started an evangelistic team, which functioned for a year or 2 there, like that. And then at that time, they said, WEC has always been into planting churches, and they had kind of maybe a little bit backed off from that. They thought, we'll establish the churches that are already there. But then they decided to refocus. Okay, we're going to start planting churches again. So they picked a place where there was nothing, a district where there was less than 0.1% Christians. And they said, would you like to go plant a church there? And we said, well, we didn't know. We didn't jump at that. We thought, oh gosh, that's going to be kind of tough, you know. But okay, if you want us to go there, we'll do that. And they sent Connie and me with a couple of lady missionaries. And one thing we knew was that God wanted to do it. We knew that. And we knew that if we were faithful to evangelize, we were faithful to pray, that God could do it. And so that's how we got started planning a church.
And that's where you're at now.
Yeah, that's where we're at now. We started doing that in 2006. And now there is a group of believers there, which still needs to grow bigger. But there is a group of believers there that wasn't there before.
We have 3 leaders.
We have 3 leaders now.
So you have a church there.
Yeah, we have a church there. Yeah.
Good. Now you need a building, right?
Yeah, we need a building too. Yeah, because the thing in Thai culture, in Thai society, they're taught since the time they're little kids in school growing up. You can see signs on the walls and stuff in the schools. The 3 pillars of Thai society is the king, the Thai language, and the Buddhist religion. That's what being Thai is in their mind. And the Buddhist temple is like the center of the community in every sense. It's the visible center. Everything that happens in the temple. And to the Thai mind, to our Christian people's mind, now they understand, okay, the church isn't the building. They understand that. But the culture itself doesn't understand that. And so because we do need a meeting place, but even bigger than that, to establish in the community's mind the actual permanency of the Lord's work, we need a building for that too, as a witness, yeah.
All right. Well, we're getting close to out of time. So
okay.
I got to wrap it up with a couple things.
All right.
I asked, I'm ripping off Greg Laurie's thing.
Okay.
What would the Danny Turner today tell the young Danny Turner? What's the best advice you could tell the young Danny Turner?
Okay, the best advice that Danny Turner today would tell the young Danny Turner is the best evangelist is the Holy Spirit. And the greatest power to do the work of God is the love of God, which never changes. And the nature of God, which never changes. Danny Turner today would tell Danny Turner back then, you be yourself and let God be who he is inside of you. Yeah.
Amen. And don't be afraid, right?
Don't be afraid, yeah. Don't be afraid, yeah.
So, and then what would you say to someone who's sitting here today and maybe something stirred up in them right now? They're hearing this and they're going, man, that might be for me. What would you tell them?
I would tell, in God's mind, many times the greatest struggle for Christians is to understand God's mind. In God's mind, we are significant. Everything we do, everything we think about ourselves is significant in God's mind. And there are places in the world where popular notions, and I'll just get rid of all that. There are places in the world that are still pioneer mission fields that have no Christians. They don't have any national workers. Don't think about sending $50 because it won't make any difference because there's nobody there. There are places in the world where you make a difference. And sometimes we have an idea in our mind, I'm different, I'm culturally different, I look different, it won't work. No, God crosses all those boundaries. If your heart is with the Lord, people understand that. Okay, so you're significant, you're needed in the work of God. If you were to go somewhere to an unreached place to begin to minister, God will use you, number one. And number two, the Lord is our helper. It's not our great skill, our great knowledge, not even our great motivation. We found out long ago the mercy of God is much greater than our abilities.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. And I think, for me, in my mind, a prime example is this young lady from Topeka, Kansas, this guy from Bisbee, Arizona, and this other guy from Bisbee, Arizona.
Yeah.
And God has used us in spite of us.
Yeah, that's right, in spite of us.
And,
Kind of in spite,
it's
yeah.
stepping out in faith, just trusting the Lord and going for it. And hey, you guys, thank you.
Thank you.
What a great witness you are, testimony. Danny has, did you put it out there?
Yeah.
Danny has a very, very, very powerful, effective tool called a sheet of paper. It's out on the information counter. If you want to get his newsletter, just put down your email address.
Yeah.
You can get on their newsletter. Then, as we're getting ready to go and wrapping up, a couple things. One reason I wanted to bring them up is so you all could see them. Now you've seen them. They're going to be here for a while. Have them over. There's a ton of stuff we didn't cover. and we kind of went over things quick. You want to know more? Have them over. Have a meal with them. And they're great to hang out with. You'll be blessed. You'll be